I'm sick of watching Caitlin getting attacked. If the league doesn't step up and protect her, things are going to get ugly real fast.
One of the greatest shooters who has ever lived watched Caitlin Clark play basketball and basically described watching himself.
Her range, her three-point shooting overall, her flair for testing her range every night and knowing that the other team's going to try to take it away. And she's fearless. No shot is a bad shot, and when you can shoot it as well as she can. She just adds another element of surprise that you can't really game plan for because it's so kind of just unseen. Once she crosses half court, she's within her range. It's always a threat. Biggest thing is how she balances that and her playmaking ability to get everybody else involved.
No fake mic grab, no live TV meltdown, no made-up drama. The real story is much better than that, because when Stephen Curry talks about Caitlin Clark, he does not sound like someone just being polite. He sounds like someone who recognizes part of his own game in another player. And that matters, because Steph Curry is not just a great shooter, he is the shooter who changed basketball forever. He changed where defenders have to pick players up. He made the logo 3 feel normal. He made every kid in a gym think they could pull up from ridiculous range. So when Curry looks at Caitlin Clark and says her release is basically identical to his, that is not just a nice compliment. That is a basketball earthquake.
Somebody break down the release time, which is pretty much identical to mine. And then her just confidence, you can't help but watch when she plays, where she's shooting from, the range, the confidence, the flair, like she's a performer.
Think about what he is really saying. He is not only talking about the distance, he is talking about the speed, the rhythm, the confidence, the way the ball is gone before the defense can even react. That is what makes Clark different, and that is why the Curry comparison hits so hard, because nobody understands that kind of shooting better than Steph Curry. He knows how hard it is to shoot from deep. He knows how hard it is to do it under pressure. He knows what it feels like when defenses are built around stopping you before you even cross half court. So when Curry praises Caitlin Clark, he is not just saying she can shoot. He is saying, I know exactly how hard this is.
There's been a lot of talk about Caitlin Clark being an amazing shooter and just someone we're watching. Have you spoken to her? Do you know her? What do you think?
I've been watching from afar and understanding just how much of a power she is out there on the court. The cool part is the way that she plays and her range and the level of difficulty on her shots is obviously a very close comparison to the way that I play.
I was going to say Caitlin Clark's been compared to you.
Yeah, but I think it almost robs her of like the rest of her game because she's such a good floor, she has her overall, floor game. She's racking up, close to triple doubles every night, and her shooting ability is, it's her superpower, but the rest of her game is as polished as that. And so it's must-see TV. I love what it has done for, women's basketball in terms of when she shows up, the seats are filled.
And that is why his words carry more weight than almost anyone else's. Analysts can debate her. Critics can call her overrated. Talking heads can argue about hype, ratings, attention, and media coverage. But when the greatest shooter ever looks at Caitlin Clark and sees something familiar, people should probably listen, because Caitlin Clark is not dangerous only because she can shoot from deep. She is dangerous because the threat of that shot changes everything. The defense has to stretch, help defenders hesitate, passing lanes open, teammates get easier looks. The whole floor changes because one player has to be guarded from places where most players would never even think about shooting.
He was shooting, letting that ball fly. I watched a little bit, but then I had to do some treatment. But it was amazing. I watched the first half, but she got to go in the second half, so I didn't watch that. She can shoot it better than me.
That is the Curry effect, and Clark has her own version of it. That is the real connection between them, not fake drama, not a viral lie, not some headline about Steph grabbing a microphone. The real story is two players connected by the same basketball idea. Range changes everything. Confidence changes everything. Fearless shooting changes everything. And the respect goes both ways. Caitlin Clark has never hidden how much she admires Steph Curry. She has talked about loving his game. She has talked about the influence he had on her style. And when she was asked which NBA player she would want to play one-on-one, she gave the perfect answer. She basically said she would get killed by every NBA player, but she picked Steph Curry anyway.
If you could play one-on-one with anybody, Current, not current, who would it be?
That's a fantastic question. Current or not current?
NBA, WNBA.
Well, like, I would get killed by every NBA player, but like Steph Curry.
You would replace one-on-one
Yeah.
with Steph Curry. I thought you were gonna say Peyton Pritchard.
That's great. Peyton Pritchard. Yes.
That answer is funny, but it also tells you the truth. Curry is not just another superstar to her. He is the blueprint.
You know, I grew up watching Steph. Like, to me, he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. But I was also a kid that grew up getting to watch him, and I think he's really changed the way basketball is being played. Maybe at times, me and him both, like, kids shouldn't always just go and chuck a bunch of threes, but that's what makes the game so exciting and what he's been able to do throughout his career. He's really changed basketball, and, you know, everybody that's ever met him knows how good of a person he is, too. So it's cool to be here. Like, he's somebody I certainly idolize.
The freedom to shoot from anywhere. The freedom to turn a normal possession into a moment. The freedom to make the crowd stand up before the ball even leaves your hands. That is what Clark grew up watching. And now Curry is watching her do her own version of it. That is why this is bigger than a compliment. It feels like basketball lineage. Steph Curry changed what was possible in the men's game. Caitlin Clark is helping change what is possible in the women's game. Different leagues, different journeys, different pressure, but the same kind of gravity, the same panic from defenses, the same feeling that something wild can happen the second the ball touches their hands. And here is my hot take. The Steph Curry cosign might be the most important endorsement Caitlin Clark has ever received. Not because Curry is famous, not because it makes a good headline, but because he is the perfect person to judge the exact thing that makes her special. When a random commentator says Clark has deep range, that is an opinion. When Steph Curry says her release reminds him of his own, that hits different. That is the master of the craft recognizing the same pattern in someone else. And that makes the overrated debate look lazy, because people can argue about the attention, they can argue about the media, they can argue about the fan base, but the basketball is right there. The range is real, the passing is real, the pressure she puts on defenses is real, and now the greatest shooter ever has basically said he sees it too. But let's be clear, praise from Steph Curry is not a trophy, it is not a championship, it is not an MVP. It does not mean Caitlin Clark has already reached the top. She still has to build the rest of her career. She still has to keep improving. She still has to handle the traps, the double teams, the physicality, the bad nights, and the pressure that comes with being the biggest name in the league. Curry's praise is not the finish line. It is a signpost. It tells you what her ceiling could be. It tells you that what people are seeing is not imaginary. It tells you that one of the smartest shooters in basketball history watched her and understood why she feels different. So forget the fake mic grab story. The real Steph Curry and Caitlin Clark connection is better. It is about respect, influence, skill, and one revolutionary shooter tipping his cap to another player who is changing the way the game is watched. So now I want to know what you think. Is the Curry comparison fair, or is the bar still too high? And at the same stage of their careers, who was the better pure shooter? Drop your answer in the comments.
Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark went to battle today with the Atlanta Dream taking on the Indiana Fever. As you can see right here, Angel Reese, got called for a foul on Caitlin Clark flopping. Angel Reese smiling, let people know about it. She also did a little bit of mocking there.
Every time Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese share the same floor, the internet does not just react. It explodes. One hard foul becomes a conspiracy. One stare becomes disrespect. One camera angle becomes evidence. Suddenly, everyone online acts like they just watched the biggest scandal in basketball.
Last night, the Indiana Fever went up against Angel Reese and the Atlanta Dream. Caitlin Clark debuting her new shoe, her signature shoe, the Caitlin Ones. Last night would have been a night where if you really had your teammates back, if you had your players back as a coach, you step up. You rise to the occasion. You play inspired. You give effort defensively. You don't look lackadaisical.
But here is the truth. That is what the machine wants. Because Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese is real. The tension is real. The history is real. But a lot of what gets built around it is not real at all. It is rage bait.
About the foul baiting as well. tonight, Angel Reese went off for 21, 11, 1 assist. She did so on 57% shooting. Caitlin Clark, 26.7 assists, 2 rebounds, but 5 turnovers and a minus 12 plus minus as well. Also, Angel Reese right now, the only player in the W to be averaging 15 plus points and 12 rebounds. She's actually the only person averaging a 15-point double-double right now in the W. Performing really, really well in year 3 here is Angel Reese.
Today we need to separate the real rivalry from the fake drama. And the craziest part is they do not need to fake anything. The real story is big enough. This exploded in the 2023 National Championship. LSU versus Iowa. Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark. Reese's team wins the title. The cameras catch Reese doing the "you can't see me" gesture toward Clark, the same gesture Clark had used earlier in the tournament. And then Reese points to her ring finger. That one moment lit the fuse.
And Angel Reese knows a ring is coming.
Overnight, the country split into sides. Some called it confidence. Some called it disrespect. The conversation became personal. It became ugly. And the internet learned one dangerous thing. Clark plus Reese equals clicks. Then they both enter the WNBA, and the rivalry scales up. Now it is the pros. It is national television. Every possession gets slowed down, zoomed in, circled in red, and turned into evidence. A hard box out becomes disrespect. A foul becomes targeting. A look after a bucket becomes beef. A quote gets chopped up and pushed out like a declaration of war. That is where fans need to stop and ask one question. What actually happened? Because here is what is real. Clark does not want to lose to Reese. Reese does not want to lose to Clark. That is not hatred. That is sports.
I don't owe Angel Reese an apology. I've always thought Angel Reese was a really good player. She was going to do one thing at a high level when she got drafted, and that was rebound. And she's done that. What she has done is kind of shut a lot of people up, because it was plenty of people that were saying she can't score in the WNBA. She's not going to be able to get buckets in the WNBA. And she's worked on her game. She's improved her offensive game. And if it was this easy, other players would be doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
They would all be getting double-doubles, and they can't. And so you got to give her credit. She went out and worked on her game, because coming out of college, it was, she's not going to be able to score in the WNBA. You shouldn't get some rebounds.
When Indiana and Chicago meet, the intensity jumps. Bodies hit the floor. Rebounds get fought for. Every loose ball feels bigger than one regular season game. And the contrast is real. Clark is the long-range storm. She bends the defense from 30 feet away. Reese is the force on the glass. She lives in the paint, fights for position, and turns missed shots into extra possessions. One creates panic with range. The other creates pressure with physicality. And the impact is real too. When these two are involved, people watch, argue, buy tickets, and suddenly know the schedule. That is growth happening in real time. But now we need to talk about what is not real. The mind reading, the fake quotes, the thumbnails screaming that one of them destroyed the other, the videos claiming one player exposed the other because of a 3-second clip with no audio. This is how the rage bait machine works. Somebody finds a clip. Maybe it is a hard foul. Maybe it is a normal collision. Maybe it is just two players standing near each other after a whistle. Then they freeze the most dramatic frame. They add a red arrow. They add one giant word like attacked, mocked, or humiliated. Then they invent the emotion. They tell you Clark was furious. They tell you Reese was laughing. They tell you somebody was jealous, bitter, scared, exposed, or embarrassed. But when you actually watch the full clip, sometimes nothing happened. No quote, no confrontation, no scandal, just basketball. And by the time anyone checks, it is too late. 10 other channels copy it. A fake quote gets repeated like it is confirmed. A normal foul becomes a personal attack. Millions of people walk away believing they saw something that never actually happened. That is the dangerous part. Attention is good for the league. Emotion is part of sports. The problem is when fans stop watching the game and start watching edited evidence packages designed to make them angry. So here is the rule. If someone says Reese said something, show the clip. If someone says Clark reacted, show the footage. If someone says there was an incident, show the full play. Not one screenshot, not a red circle, not dramatic music. The proof. Because this rivalry does not need fake fuel. It is already fire. And honestly, that is my biggest take. The people inventing extra drama are not making Clark versus Reese bigger. They are making it cheaper. They are taking two of the most important athletes in the sport and flattening them into cartoon characters. Clark becomes the hero, Reese becomes the villain, or depending on the channel, the roles flip. But real life is not that simple. Caitlin Clark is a killer competitor. Angel Reese is a high-level player, a competitor, a personality, and someone who understands that attention is part of the business. That is what makes this compelling. Not fake hatred, real tension, real history, real contrast, real stakes. They do not need to be friends. Rivalries are built on stakes. They are built on the feeling that when these two players share the court, something bigger is happening. And Clark versus Reese has that. When they play, it matters. So the next time you see a thumbnail screaming that one of them snapped, mocked, attacked, or destroyed the other, ask one question: where is the proof? Because the real Clark versus Reese story is not boring. But the fake version is just people selling you anger because they know you will click. So enjoy the rivalry, pick your side, argue in the comments, but do not let somebody trick you into believing a feud they had to invent. Watch the game, watch the full clip. So let me know below, is Clark versus Reese good for the league, or has the media already pushed it too far? Like the video if you want the real story without the fake outrage. Subscribe for the next one, and I will see you in the next video.
All right, we got Caitlin Clark addressing the elephant in the room. Caitlin Clark finally called out Stephanie White for this bum offense, this bum offensive game plan that she comes out with, getting in her way, yelling at her to pass the ball like she's Kelsey Mitchell. It's insane.
Let me say the thing a lot of Fever fans are thinking, but not everyone wants to say out loud. Caitlin Clark should not look this trapped. This is one of the most dangerous offensive guards basketball has seen in years. She can pull from 30 feet and turn a fast break into panic. And yet, too often, she looks boxed in. Not just guarded, boxed in.
I cannot stress enough how much I hate Stephanie White. Like, it is not one of these things where it's like, oh, you're, I think she's a sabotaging Caitlin, all this stuff. Like, I'm not gonna go that far. I'm not gonna go that far. Albeit, if you are someone that's gone that far, I am not gonna stop you. I'm not gonna stop you. I think trying to believe that someone is a good person is not a bad mentality to have towards things. But I will stand by this. I hate her.
And before anyone twists this, no, I am not saying Stephanie White is a bad coach. I am not saying Caitlin Clark is perfect. I am not saying every Fever problem begins and ends on the sideline. But we need to have the real conversation. Because right now, the Caitlin Clark experience and the Stephanie White system do not look fully aligned. Clark is speed, spacing, instinct, and chaos. White is structure, control, discipline, and half-court execution. And when those two worlds crash into each other, Indiana has to answer one uncomfortable question. Do you build the system around the superstar, or do you squeeze the superstar into the system?
Caitlin Clark finally starting to stand up for herself in terms of this Stephanie White situation. And she also addressed the fact that finally she has a couple teammates willing to stand up for her. For so long, so many of her teammates will watch her get pushed, swung at, knocked to the floor, and do absolutely nothing. Caitlin Clark addressed that as well.
Clark did not enter this league quietly. She was the #1 pick, Rookie of the Year, and she brought sold-out arenas and national pressure. But what made Clark special was never just the numbers. It was the feeling. The second she crossed half court, the building changed. Defenders got nervous, fans leaned forward, teammates ran harder because they knew the ball could find them from anywhere. That is her superpower. Pace, space, pressure. She does not just run an offense. She stretches the court until the defense breaks. Then Indiana brought in Stephanie White. And to be fair, White can coach. She has credibility. She has won. She knows Indiana. She understands pressure. But good coaches can still create the wrong fit when they try to make the talent fit the system instead of making the system fit the talent.
Nothing's ever enough for you. Nothing is ever enough for you, Stephanie White. No matter how many times Caitlin Clark shows up to save your behind over and over and over again, you don't seem to get it. We got Stephanie White. This played a huge part into the first quarter debacle. Stephanie White crashing out, yelling at Caitlin Clark to pass the ball. You don't never yell at Kelsey Mitchell to pass the ball. She's yelling out at Caitlin Clark, move it, move it. Every time she touched the ball, her and Brianne January clapping at her from the bench to pass the ball. This is crazy. This is ridiculous. We got to get into the footage, man.
And that is where the Fever looks stuck. You see possessions where the ball slows down. You see Clark giving it up early and not always getting it back in dangerous spots. You see defenders loading up because the spacing does not always punish them. You see Indiana playing safe basketball with an unsafe weapon standing right there. That is what drives people crazy, because Caitlin Clark is not supposed to be used like a normal point guard. Normal point guards initiate the offense. Clark detonates it. Normal guards wait for the play to develop. Clark is the development. So when Indiana slows everything down and makes her operate inside a tighter box, they are shrinking her biggest advantage. And you can feel it.
Stephanie White will pull a move like this after continuously getting her ass saved by Caitlin Clark. This team scored 6 points in the whole first quarter, and I watched Caitlin Clark pretty much check out of the first quarter. Like, what the hell? I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. This is ridiculous. We got to get into the footage, man. Take a look at Stephanie White, like crashing out on Caitlin Clark to pass the ball, when in reality, she's the only one on this team that ever passes the damn ball. Now listen to the audio. You gotta listen. You're gonna hear her yelling at Caitlin Clark every time she has the ball. Move it, move it, move it. Listen to this.
3-point lead here for Phoenix. Mac gets the switch with.
Did y'all hear that? Move it, move it.
The crowd can feel it, the defense can feel it, even the broadcast can feel it. There are stretches where the Fever look like they are holding one of the fastest basketball engines in the world at half speed. That is not balance, that is conflict, and this is where people turn every sideline moment into a conspiracy. I am not doing that. I will not invent words or sell a fake locker room war. But the tension is not imaginary. It is basketball tension, a superstar trying to play free. A coach trying to install control. This is a battle for the identity of the Indiana Fever. So here is my honest take. The coaching is not failing Caitlin Clark in the lazy internet rage way people want to say it. But the system is not fully serving her either. And that matters. Because when you have a generational offensive talent, you do not ask her to blend in. You do not put the Ferrari in traffic and then complain it is not moving fast enough. You clear the road. That does not mean Clark does whatever she wants. It means great coaching is not about proving your system works. It is about proving your system can evolve.
Look, I'm not as extreme as Venom, but like that man has enough evidence that his points, like the amount of people that have called him every name under the sun, I'm like, he has enough evidence for every one of his points that you're like, okay, even if you don't agree with them, he's clearly has his reasons. And this is another thing where I'm like, so Caitlin Clark picked up a tech that she had no right getting. She had no right at all to be teed up here. I mean that.
Let Clark push the ball off makes, not just misses. Let her attack before the defense gets set. Put more shooting around her so teams pay for loading up. Stop using her gravity like a bonus feature and start treating it like the foundation. And in the final minutes, the ball has to find her hands. Not as a decoy, not standing in the corner, not waiting while the possession gets squeezed down to 6 seconds. In her hands. Because when the game tightens, your best advantage has to become your clearest decision. Now, to be fair to White, this is not easy. Every game is a microscope. Every loss becomes a national debate. And Clark has things to clean up too. The turnovers matter, the shot selection matters, the physicality matters. This is not a cartoon where Clark is always right. But here is the difference. Clark is the rare piece. Clark is the engine. Clark is the reason the ceiling is different. So yes, she has to grow. But Indiana has to grow around her, not away from her. The Fever are not just deciding how to play basketball. They are deciding what kind of franchise they want to become. A team with a superstar hopes the great player fits. A superstar-led team builds around her gifts. Indiana has to choose. Let White build the defensive backbone. Let Clark drive the offensive identity. White does not need to lose control. Clark needs to be given the controls. There is a difference. You do not get this kind of player often. So when you do get her, you do not spend the season trying to make her ordinary. You build something extraordinary. The Fever have a superstar. They have a serious coach. They have pressure from every direction. And right now, the system and the star are still fighting for the steering wheel. Tell me in the comments, is this coaching, roster, or just the painful part of building something big? Hit subscribe because this Fever story is nowhere near finished.